Hello everyone, I am Jesse, or GameOverJesse as all of you may know me. Here with us is Daniel and Jacob and Ilya, and today we're going to be talking about the next Zelda game. We're going to be going into a little bit of the next 3 Zelda games. We shortly went over Skyward Sword HD and who is likely developing it based off of actual facts and interviews. So no real speculation there. And we have other interviews about the next couple of Zelda games that we're going to be talking about here. So this all comes from GameInformer's slip-up, I guess, is what they intended for it to be. But what they said about the next Zelda game and the Triforce Heroes team and it coming sooner than we think is all stuff that we've known for over a year. I have a video literally covering everything that they mentioned. It's a really well done scripted video. Daniel here edited it, but we're going to go over this in a discussion format and discuss what they went through. So GameInformer here, this article comes from My Nintendo News, but it's covering what they did in their podcast. And it says, GameInformer editor, next Zelda game coming sooner than we think. It says, the editor of GameInformer has revealed in their latest podcast that the Zelda game is due sooner than we think. The news was shared when the team were discussing a Zelda-themed Nintendo Switch system. Ben Hansen, who is part of the GameInformer crew, said that he predicts the next game will be a co-op Zelda game by the Triforce Hero team. Then Khan chimes in with the following. I was just thinking what I should say about that. The next Zelda will probably be sooner than we think. He pauses for a second and says, I will talk to you guys off camera about stuff. And when asked if it was a game by the Triforce Heroes team and involves co-op, he responds, not exactly. So the reason for this is because over a year ago, there was an interview, I believe by GameInformer, when Breath of the Wild first released, where Aonuma literally said that the next game that he wanted to work on after Breath of the Wild was a multiplayer game that took the multiplayer concept of Triforce Heroes and applied it to the new Breath of the Wild engine. Like, he literally told them that in the interview. That's why he says, when he's asked about the Triforce Heroes team, he says, not exactly, because it's taking stuff from the Triforce Heroes concept, but it's not the Triforce Heroes team, because the Triforce Heroes team was mostly Grezzo, who worked on Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D, Triforce Heroes, Ever Oasis, Luigi's Mansion 3D. So that's the team that is like 90% responsible for Triforce Heroes. So no, they're not making the next big Zelda game. They might be making some sort of Zelda game. They worked on Ocarina of Time 3D and Majora's Mask 3D. I could see them porting those games to the Switch. Similar to how Fire Emblem Warriors released on the 3DS and the Nintendo Switch on the same day. So there have been a lot of Wii U games that ended up on the 3DS or 3DS games that ended up on the Nintendo Switch. So it's very likely that Grezzo could take Ocarina of Time 3D and Majora's Mask 3D and put them on the Nintendo Switch in HD. But with this specifically, that's why it's not necessarily what he says, not exactly the Triforce Heroes team, because it's just taking the concept of the multiplayer that they made. But it is the next big Zelda game from the Breath of the Wild crew. And when he says it might be coming sooner than we think, that is because Majora's Mask, when it was made, they only had a year to make it, an entirely new game. They had 1 year to make it. A lot of Zelda games end up getting delayed because they want to try to put more stuff in it and fix it and make it the best game possible. So they keep delaying it so they can make it as perfect as they can. With Majora's Mask, the entire reason it exists is because they rushed it. And I bring this up because around that time, so like when Ocarina first started, the team that was working on Ocarina of Time when it first began was 3 people. and slowly they started bringing over people that had worked on Super Mario 64 and bringing on new people. By the time Majora's Mask came around, they had a team of like around 40 people, I think. There's an interview that I read that mentioned something around that. And then when Twilight Princess was made, and Iwata Asks, they mentioned that the team was around 70 people. So with Breath of the Wild, they had mentioned that they have their own Nintendo development team that's like around 80 or 100 people that worked on Breath of the Wild. But they also hired, like, I think around 200 or like 180 other developers from the Xenoblade Chronicles development team, because they had experience working on giant open world HD games. So they like brought almost the entire team over to help Breath of the Wild. And the reason Breath of the Wild kept getting delayed and held off, and the reason it took so long, was because they were trying to fix the physics engine in the game. It wasn't the dungeons or the story or anything like that. What made it take so long and get delayed, they said, was the engine. And now that they have the engine perfectly fixed, it is entirely possible that since they don't have to worry about the engine, they already have tons of ideas left over from Breath of the Wild that they wanted to use, but they didn't think it really fit in the game, although they thought they were great ideas. They brought up the hook shot, or the claw shot. They really wanted it in the game, but they said it made it seem like it was more of like a Spider-Man type game, because you can grab onto anything in the game. And then there was a bunch of underwater stuff that they showed in Zelda Encyclopedia, and it was one of the Zelda development books. And then they released a bunch of stuff online where it's like Link in an underwater suit or whatever. So there was like underwater exploration and everything cut from the game. And there's just all of this stuff that they left out of the game. And that was part of the reason why Majora's Mask was able to be made so quickly, because they had all of these leftover dungeons that didn't get put into Ocarina of Time because of the Ura expansion. So that's why Majora's Mask was able to get made in 1 year. Now with Breath of the Wild, they hinted at like the game was technically finished before, like a few months before it actually released, is what they hinted at. But they wanted to delay the game to launch with the Nintendo Switch. So they just spent the extra time, like a small part of the team stayed on to work on like just polishing the game up and stuff like that. And then they slowly started adding in these features that they left out of the game that became DLC. Like the motorcycle was a feature that they showed off at the Games Developer Conference in 2017, where they showed off a bunch of other stuff. Like they were originally going to have Minish in the game. They were going to have Kokiri instead of Koroks. There was going to be a Kokiri champion. They had all of this stuff that they were going to do, but it got taken out of the game because they thought of better ideas that matched with the theme of the game. But they slowly started adding in those ideas, like the motorcycle, which they showed that they like left out of the beta of the game or whatever. So because they had these ideas left over, that's how they were able to get the DLC and stuff. And then around that time that Breath of the Wild released, Aonuma mentioned that they were wanting to experiment with like the engine and Triforce Heroes and everything to make this multiplayer Breath of the Wild pseudo sequel type game. And they've been working on that. Like, if you think of a game the size of Breath of the Wild, you think, oh, that's going to take a long time to develop. But because, like, at the time Majora's Mask was made, Ocarina of Time was a huge world. Like, it was one of the, like, largest worlds for, like, Nintendo 64 and, like, PlayStation 1 games and stuff.
Holy cow, look, all this empty field.
Yeah. Like, if you
blowing all of our minds back in the day.
If you run from like the back of Lake Hylia all the way up to the top of Death Mountain, that takes like so many minutes just to get there, and it's on the Nintendo 64. At the time, they only had like 40 something people, and they made Majora's Mask with that 40-something people in 1 year. Like, it's a lot smaller than Breath of the Wild is, but at the time, compared to the technology they had, it was comparable to Breath of the Wild for this generation. Like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, like that's their equivalent. But now, whenever they have these, like instead of 40 developers, they have like potentially hundreds of developers from their own team, and then the Xenoblade team they used, it's very likely that they would be able to make this sequel in a year or two. If they have all of these concepts left over that they wanted to use but didn't fit with the game, like Majora's Mask, they can just reuse them here. He already knows what he wants to do. He had mentioned that there was a bunch of like actual dungeons that they wanted to use, and there was like tons of guardians that they created that they wanted to use. Like one looked like War of the Worlds, to where it's like the giant tentacle legs with like the globe head at the top of it, and there's like a city inside the head.
Crap out of me as a kid.
Yeah, so there was a bunch of guardians and stuff that they built that they didn't put in the game. So like they can retool all of those and easily, very quickly make a dungeon out of those. And like they had an entire Minish village and an entire Kokiri forest that they took out of the game. That if they're like, oh, we need a village, they can just literally bring that left out village over and place it in this new world somewhere and be done with it in like a day, instead of spending weeks or months creating a village from scratch. So with all of these leftover ideas, the game being perfectly or the engine being perfectly made, the size of the team that they have, the experience they have with the game, the fact that they're only developing it for one system instead of the Wii U and the Switch, which the Switch was much more powerful than the Wii U. And on the Switch, not only did they have to make it for the Switch, but they also had to have a toned down version to work in handheld mode at 720p, and then they had to have like a higher spec version to run at 900p and docked mode. So there's all this stuff that they had to worry about, like basically 3 different versions. Now they don't have to do that. They have plenty of experience working in the engine, working on the Switch. They have so many developers. Very easily, they could get this game out in 2 years. If you look at Assassin's Creed, how large those worlds are, and they come out with basically a new game every year, and every year they have a map that's like half the size to almost the entire size of Breath of the Wild, and it's completely different every single year. Like all of that's done in like 1 year or 2 years, and Breath of the Wild is the same. Yeah. Like I'm sure they have different teams that might go back and forth, but basically, you know, they put out these games every single year, and Breath of the Wild is basically the same in terms of like the open world scale. So you think of this game like, oh, it's going to take another 5 years, and it's like, no, like they could have it done in like a year and a half if they really tried. But if they wanted to like work on it and make it special, 2 to 3 years would be the goal. And there's been interviews where Aonuma has said that he hates the 5 to 6 year time schedule, that he would like to have these new big Zelda games out every 2 to 3 years. But
I'd like that too.
yeah,
I'm game.
ironically, one of the times that he said this was after Skyward Sword, because Skyward Sword took like 6 or 7 years, and that was basically all because of the motion control. The engine that ran the motion control, they wanted to get it perfect, so they kept delaying that game. And he, like at the same time, he mentioned, because we have the engine perfect, when we make the next game, I would love to just have a 2 to 3 year cycle instead of a 5 to 6 year cycle. But then instead of, you know, like a Skyward Sword sequel, they started on Breath of the Wild. And then with Breath of the Wild, they had even more trouble with the engine. But this time, because they're using the same engine, again, I'm trying to get it across. Basically, what everyone is being excited about and getting hyped about, this Game Informer thing that, like, I don't know, like, if he talked to someone at Nintendo and he has, like, he had been confirmed special information and he accidentally let it slip, or if it's him just knowing that, oh, if I pretend I let something slip, that I know something, then everyone will talk about it because everyone wants the new Zelda game. So anytime something's mentioned by a reputable site, everyone will talk about it. And it's not that he's making up anything in it, because it's all stuff, again, that we've all already knew. Aonuma literally told everyone all of this stuff 2 or 3 different times. So that was my issue with it. That, like, I seen everyone getting excited about it, and I'm like, but didn't everyone already know this? Like, I've literally talked about it in like 15 different videos, some of which have close to like 500,000 to 1 million views. So I know people have seen it. Do they just forget? Or I don't really understand.
Yes, they do. They forget.
Yeah, so that's my thought on it. Basically, the next game, if you go by what Nintendo tells us, is going to be basically like Breath of the Wild, but just online multiplayer. And it might switch back to traditional dungeons, who knows? But I imagine it being like Breath of the Wild, to where you could call in Wolf Link at any time to be like your second player, but it was the computer, the CPU, was controlling Wolf Link, not a second player. But I imagine the multiplayer in this next Zelda game being optional, just like that, to where you can play it all single player, or you can have a buddy like pick up a controller and come in and start playing with you, just like you could have Wolf Link. So that's my entire rant. Sorry it took an hour, but again, this is stuff we all already knew. Ilya, how are you? That's a cool water bottle you got.
It's water.
Yeah, so your thoughts on all this? Since we are done with the facts.
Kind of foggy at the moment. Someone may have probably saw I downed
tequila.
Pain medication earlier, so right now my head's a little foggy.
So what I said. Wait, physical or emotional pain?
Both. Physical pain.
Oh.
But
Still worse. It still works.
I wish. Actually, no, alcohol would make this worse. Anyway, what Jesse said. We all already knew.
No, so
we all knew.
So basically,
but especially us, we especially know this because, like you said, we talked about it before, so it is kind of surprising. It's like, well, like, I guess anyone that like follows the channel, you would think like, oh, hopefully, you know, but there must be a lot more Zelda fans than we know.
Probably.
Yeah, but so with this, like, we know, like, if the Skyward Sword game comes out, I think that would be like the first next game that would release. And I think if it is true, as Aonuma's hinted apparently twice, from what GameInformer says, then it will be coming out at the same time all of the other remakes did, which is around February or March. And then maybe they could have their big 2D Zelda game that they've been working on for like 4 or 5 years. They could release that towards the end of the year. And then maybe the year after they have their big multiplayer Zelda game. I think that may be the timeline for all of them releasing. Like 2020 for the big multiplayer game, and then that would be like 3 years of development.
It makes sense.
Which is still sooner than we think. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people think, like, oh, it's going to be like 6 years for the next Zelda game, because that's what we're used to. So if someone said, hey, it'll be out in 3 or 4 years, technically that's still a lot sooner than people think. But he could have been talking about the 2D game that they're working on that's, like, literally probably already done. They're just waiting to release it, because there's no way you can take 5 years to make a 2D Zelda game. But yeah, anyways, Ilya, hi. I'm sorry I keep rambling. It just annoys me that it's like, we already knew this. Come on.
It's probably the casual Zelda gamers that would, whereas the rest of us that are steeped in the lore and all the news, you know.
Us
and like, I
nerds.
mean, I think of like myself back when, before I dove as deep as I am into Zelda, probably back, I don't know, like during high school when it was just more casual. If I heard about a Zelda game, it would be like through the grapevine of random people, which would be difficult because I didn't really know many people that played video games back then, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's been forever since there was a Zelda game. Or if I heard news like this, I'd be like, wow, I didn't know, But now, with all of us so steeped into the news.
So you're saying
like,
we tainted you?
No, you enlightened me.
Oh, okay. Join our cult. Buy our shirts.
Wait, now you never told me about this when I joined 2 years ago. Good God, Jesse.
I didn't know
That's because
either.
we wiped it from your memory. We always wipe the hazing face.
Yeah. But yeah, would you be excited for a multiplayer Zelda game that you could just get on your Switch, play with us, or whoever?
I don't know. I personally don't want multi. That's not to say I wouldn't get it though, and I can't say I wouldn't enjoy it because I haven't played such a thing. So how do I know? It wouldn't be my first choice, but if I'm online with like a bunch of y'all, then maybe I would. I would just hope it's not a super expensive game. I don't want to pay $60 for something that's mainly online. Even if there is the single player option, like, I don't know. If that's its main thing, I'd rather it not be $60. But that's just my personal preference. I like being an introvert when I play my Zelda games.
It'll also be interesting when the 2D game comes out. It'll be like the first 2D Zelda game that is like $60. So.
Oh no.
Because usually they're like 30 or 40.
I have money for that.
Yeah. So like A Link Between Worlds HD would probably be like $50. So
between 45 and 50 would make sense.
Yeah,
but depending if they include like a deluxe edition, then I could see it.
Well, like
So
Twilight Princess was 50. So, and then I think the amiibo was 60 if you wanted to get it with the game.
Oh yeah, if you wanted the amiibo, then it becomes 60.
Yeah. So yeah, Jacob, what are your thoughts on this? Are you going to be running through dungeons with me?
Like we tried in Four Sword Adventures that one time. Like,
yeah.
I need a controller for that again. Wouldn't mind a multiplayer game. I just think of like, I know a lot of people are not going to like this, but I'm saying it. It's like, you could do that type of style. And people could join in as different assassins to help you win. Problem at first was the online capability. It sucked, and it was finally fixed. I can see them going in that direction if they do multiplayer, which would be great. Assassin's Creed was working on it, but they haven't implemented it back into other games because we got after that Syndicate, and then they took 2 years off. Origins, and then it's Odyssey. Multiplayer thing, probably because they thought it was bad reception, but then again it was all the bugs that came with it. But they fixed it towards the end of its life cycle. I think they could do that. Timeline, what you say, like games, like 2019, it's like we are going to get Skyward Sword HD 2D game, which could probably be the multiplayer. But I think the big one. So I don't know. Like it makes sense. Like 2019, a Skyward Sword then released a 2D game. It's the new big one. 2020 makes sense. There's not much else I can say, but for the online multiplayer, just try to do what he did towards the end of its life cycle before they released Syndicate. Like, try to do that if you're going to go that way. I don't know how they would implement like other playable characters, like different links, maybe, or they can just. I mean, come on, they added a Piranha Plant and Smash, and they can do anything that they want for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Whatever works for them, just do it. But just try to follow like what he did before the end of its life cycle. And out of that, I think the timeline makes sense. 2 games in 2019, and then the big one in 2020, and then we see what happens from there.
Yeah. There's always the possibility that... So, Nintendo and the Team Ninja, I think, the people that made Hyrule Warriors, in past interviews, they were asked like if Hyrule Warriors 2 was a possibility, and they said if Hyrule Warriors was a success, then it was likely that they would make another one. And Hyrule Warriors was so successful on the Wii U that they released it on the 3DS. They were probably planning on releasing it on the 3DS anyways, but they did. And then it sold really well on the 3DS. People who already had the game also bought it on the 3DS just so they could get the Legends DLC. And then those same people likely bought the game on the Switch when it came out with the even more DLC, like the Breath of the Wild stuff. And they said, if it was successful, and because it was successful, they did the 2 versions of it, and then they began working on Fire Emblem Warriors, and it was a success on the 3DS and the Switch. And then they ported the Hyrule Warriors to the Switch, which also became a huge success. So from their interviews, if you go by what they said, and plans do change, originally Aonuma wanted Zelda Wii U, as it was known, to have some sort of multiplayer aspect, which it ended up not having. So plans do change, but if you go by what they said in their interviews, then Hyrule Warriors 2 is likely in development, because we don't know what else they're working on. And it would be like if they released it in 2 years, it would be perfect, because then they could tie in a bunch of the Breath of the Wild stuff, whatever they cover in the new 2D Zelda game or the upcoming Zelda game. It's non-canon, but they could mix it all in there. It'd be really cool. I don't know what a second story would be, because the first story literally covers almost everything.
Literally.
Yeah. So maybe they have to make a new boss for the 2D one. Yeah, so Daniel, your turn. Where does this theoretical multiplayer Breath of the Wild take place in the timeline?
Bananas. Sorry.
There are so many better fruits to say in German.
Gosh. I know. I want to. Well, I don't know, but I want to know.
Orangen, Erdbeere.
Happy.
Apfel.
So this is for you, Ilya, I imagine.
What?
Abigail says, Happy Zelda and Hunger Games month, everybody. Just realized we are close to the end of the month.
We are.
Thank you, Abigail.
Zelda
Thank you.
and Hunger Games are also the puns, I guess, that we used to come up with the name of this podcast. I was thinking something kind of nerdy, and I thought Hunger Games, because a podcast about video games is a games cast, and I was trying to think of something with games in the title, so I thought of Hunger Games, and then they both start with an H, so I was like, oh, well, Hunger Games Cast, Hylian Games Cast, and there we go. So it's very awesome that you brought up those 2 things.
I didn't know that.
Over a year, and he now knows. Does it make sense, though?
It makes sense.
A podcast about games is a games cast. Thinking of a phrase or a word that had games in the title to put cast after, I thought of Hunger Games, because I was watching the movies at the time. And I was like, oh, well, instead of Hunger Games, Hunger Games Cast, which would be a nice podcast for the Hunger Games series, the Hylian Games Cast, because then it has a Zelda reference, it has just a generic nerdy reference, and then it has the cast in the title, so it all just clicked. And
There we go.
I thought it was nice, and then I started thinking it was stupid, but then everyone started liking it, so I was like, oh, maybe it is nice. But I think that's just the thing where it's you think you could always do better. So
Yes.
No, I understand that.
yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So timeline, Daniel. How does this banana fit in the other pile of bananas? On the live podcast we had together, we had bananas on the table with us.
Yeah, but that's true.
And
Maybe that's why it's so stuck in my head.
and lots of alcohol.
Bananas and glasses.
You were
Full glass.
double fisting.
Yeah, there was a lot of alcohol.
I was on vacation.
No, you were, yes.
Anyway, friends with friends again. Daniel.
Welcome back to Friends with
Oh,
Friends.
no.
Every time I open my mouth, I derail the entire discussion. Apparently.
I think Orion may be watching now, because he says, oh man, I just realized you're all live. Hello to you all, and have a great show.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
Hello,
Where
Ori.
was that, on Twitter?
It was on Facebook. It was a private message.
Fuck. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
He got up in my DMs, if you know what I mean.
Oh, all up in your DMs.
Yeah. All right,
So
so
the
yeah, so,
Yeah, so the-
multiplayer, Daniel.
I'm so down for that.
No one's.
You know,
You can just just talk about it. It's your time. This is your
enjoy-
moment to talk about all of this stuff without anyone interrupting you.
Okay, so
It's all you. All right. No. Okay. I'm done.
Drops mic.
You can go. I'll mute.
don't stop. Having the time of my life.
But yeah. It's just like a little nod towards the people. It's like, why is he always talking? And it's like, well, I'm the main host of the show. I read the news. If you watched another,
It's his channel, people.
if you watched a,
news people, he does it for us.
yeah, it's
Also
like,
worth noting, there's so many times I just right now, I just talk right over it. I'm such a bad.
and then no, it's good. But like there's stuff that happens, but it's like, do they miss the videos where it's like Ilya or Chiblima or you or whatever guest we have that's reading the news? I don't know.
I don't know, man.
But like, see, you're the model, and all the other people like Kayla and Ilya are girls. So like, they're not gonna be mean to them. They're not gonna be mean to you because they look at you, Daniel, and they're like, oh man, he should take his shirt off.
The only one who says that is you during my streams.
All right. It's your turn to go.
Like in 20 different methods, through 20 different threads today. What game was that from?
What?
That picture you sent me.
Final Fantasy something?
Was it
on the
Which
Super
one?
Nintendo? I don't know.
Okay. I don't know. You sent me.
Someone posted it, and it was just like, "Oh, you're the most handsome person here." And then right below it, it was like his pixelated face because it was like a Super Nintendo game. And I was
Right.
like, "Ah, that's kind of funny. I'll put Daniel's face on it and make it even more funny."
Here it is.
Yeah, like cropped his face out and reversed the side, and you look totally different in it.
In this
like,
picture?
yeah, because like I switched
Oh.
it, like reversed it from left to right.
Yeah, and my hair's shorter.
And I was like, that doesn't even look like. I was
My hair's a lot
honestly,
shorter.
I was honestly afraid nobody would notice that it was you, because it looked so different from how you looked. I thought people would be like, why did he put a random face on the thing?
Have you seen this?
Dude, banana.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you so much, Cliff.
Oh, Mina the vampire says, Daniel, can we
It's
see
not
the sword in the
spelled
background,
correctly.
please, Koopa?
Oh, I'm sorry. Everyone talking, and I heard nobody.
The sword. Daniel,
They
can
didn't
we
spell D bananan.
can we see the sword in the background, please, Koopa? Koopa.
Okay.
It's
The sword in the background? The sword?
D-I-E.
The sword that's behind me?
I think that's the one they're talking about, the one behind the Hylian shield.
The sword? Okay. Hang on.
Also,
D banana.
also, the word D in German is spelled like die in English. It's not D-E.
you meant this one, right?
Is that the paper cutter?
Yeah, it's a letter opener.
Or letter opener? Yeah,
Yeah.
I have mine right there.
Oh yeah, with the nice. It's got the nice pedestal.
Yeah.
I've also got this. I've got too many. 2 different keychains that were Hylian shields.
When I get
But then
rich,
this
I'll buy
one-
swords.
Oh, it actually comes out, and this is actually sharp. I don't know why. I don't know who thought this was a good idea.
That's a danger.
So I'll just put that back where I found it. Oh, but anyways, no, this is the one she was said. Would you believe my mother-in-law bought this for me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You know, yes.
Yes, I would believe it.
So
I
I
assume
got
your whole
this,
family knows how much you love Zelda.
sword replica. Actually pretty accurate, other than being plastic. And
It's better than
Classic.
mine. Mine is foam.
Have you ever thought about
Mine is
buying
really
the
foamy.
like the actual metal resin replicas that they have on eBay?
I have found, and I've seen some in shops, but the metal ones are really expensive, and a lot of the time they're not as true to the actual sword.
Yeah.
Like that's true to the actual like the handle is like the general shapes right, but it's missing like half of the detail. So I'd rather one that's truer to the game, but you know, plastic. But here's a fun story about these. Okay, so I got this shield and the sword together. When I got it, it was wrapped in wrapping paper together with the... Oh god, I've ruined everything.
I'm going to show you guys the best Link cosplay that I've ever seen from one of my friends.
Show us.
I actually became friends with her because the cosplay was so great. And she actually did she did a video on my channel where she like went over like how to do the makeup and how she made the outfit and everything.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but she has like, it was the last one that the person made, but it's like an actual metal steel shield, like made and painted to look exactly like the Twilight Princess. And they have
Actually really cool.
a sword that's like actual metal and stuff, and you can buy the replicas on eBay and stuff, but they're like made out of like resin and thing, like to make it look like it's shiny metal. But I'll find it while you're talking about your banana.
Just was shaving like this. No, but the funny thing is when I got this sword and shield is they were wrapped together like that, and in wrapping paper, and I just saw the general shape of it, and I was like, what the hell? Did they give me this weird guitar or something? Like some weird plastic, like I'm holding it, I'm like, is this some weird plastic guitar? Like what the hell am I holding right now? I had no idea. And then it turned out to be that. I was thrilled, but Spencer was my son. He was 4 at the time. He was way more thrilled about it, and I get pictures of him like running around with it and stuff.
So this is the cosplayer. I just posted in the Discord, but you can see the picture of like in the thumbnail, the shield and her costume and everything.
Oh wow!
And then the video is her like going over how she actually made everything. And I forgot what country she's in, but she's actually like one of the most famous cosplayers from that country.
I've seen her videos.
Yeah, and
it was a while ago, but I've seen them.
And like she's been on like a bunch of TV shows and stuff because of her. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I remember you posting something about that like a few months ago.
Yeah. Now that I look back at what I named the video, I thought it was kind of lame. Confessions of a Cosplayer.
Oh.
But it's pretty good. Someone help with Discord? You just click the link and then you go there. Daniel, tell us. We've been on a tangent for 15 minutes. Tell us about your thoughts on multiplayer Zelda.
Forgot. I want it.
we went.
It. I want it.
We spent like an hour troubleshooting Four Swords Adventures online.
And it was so much fun. I want to
It was
play it
fun to
again.
watch.
Let's play it again, Jesse.
All right,
I keep saying like.
let's
Jesse,
get it up right now. No, it does. It just takes a lot of work. Just tell us what you would want. Do you want traditional dungeons? Do you want the dungeons from Breath of the Wild? Would you like it to be 2D? Just tell us. Tell us your.
Okay. I think it depends. I guess if you're going like couch co-op, like multiplayer on one console, I really think 2D would be better. But if we had some form of online functionality, say you both have a Switch, connect online or locally wirelessly, and have it set up that way, then I think 3D Zelda could work. I think it would be fun. I was never really into the idea of multiplayer Zeldas until playing Four Swords with Jesse like a few weeks ago, and honestly, it was a great time. I had so much fun, and I think I was soured by the whole idea of it before, because I had tried to play through Four Swords Adventure, but I had no friends that I could play it with. I should specify. Yes.
I did that with the Game Boy Advanced Four Swords.
Oh yeah.
Because they released it on the 3DS, the Anniversary Edition, and
I did not.
I, like you, had no friends either.
And now we found each other.
Yeah.
Mm.
And we ended up playing Four
This is
Swords in
actually
the
sharp.
end. Yeah. Should
This is
we
supposed
move
to
on
be
to
a
the next
letter.
one? Does anyone have any final thoughts before we move on?
had very
Just
little
read my
thoughts.
comment in our Discord currently.
Alright. I'll use my phone so I don't show it on the stream.
It's a banana. Oh, sorry, that's Cliff's comment in the Discord. God bless you, Cliff.
I see Gibbs.
The banana. Thank you very much.
Alright, yeah, you can duck out if you want.
Well, unless the mailbag is next. It's just. Yeah.
Well, the Pokemon thing was next, but it's not Zelda, so it'll be like 5 minutes.
Right. Unless we start talking
sure
about
about
Zelda.
I mean, honestly, at this point, I might just be like, okay, I'm about to puke. Bye.
Puke? No, you can't be sick.
No,
puke.
I'm not sick. But I don't puke. Sorry, everyone watching this right now. I don't. I just get extremely nauseous.
Alright,
Tequila.
but yeah, if you're like...
I can hold it out a little longer because I don't want to duck out. That's
Alright, because the Pokemon thing, I promise, like, we'll just go through the facts, and then we can do the mailbag. And then on the mailbag,
just too fun.
we'll just do one question each.
I don't care if my face is green.
Alright,
Well, it's not green yet. You're not pale yet, but you're fine. Yeah.
151.
Hey, I'm just being nice. I took first day, so I know a bunch of stuff. So.
He knows at least 2 things.
I also just know myself.
Alright,
You know, I
so...
know 2 things. Wow.
At
Alright.
least.
I'm sure you're.
Not at
at
most. I said at least.
I just feel so offended right now. I know more. Okay, I know more about you.
Yeah.
Welcome to our
Okay.
generation. We're offended by everything.
Do you know what at least means?
Wow.
Alright, let's start the Pokemon thing.
Hey everyone, it's me again, Elia Rose. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this video. And you know what? If you're a fan of videos like this, you should totally subscribe and give this video a like and comment below to let us know what type of videos you would like to see us create in the future. And if you would really like to support all of us here at the GameOverJesse channel, please consider purchasing a GameOverJesse t-shirt or becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can receive many rewards, such as getting shoutouts, having any topic or theory that you select discussed on the podcast or made into its own video, having your question answered, joining on as a guest on the podcast, and playing with us during our Twitch live streams at twitch.tv/GameOverJesse, and much, much more.